recorded. Okay, so today we'll study about scheduling, and one portion of the inter-thread communication is left out, that is semaphore, and then following to that we'll try to solve a problem on dining philosopher's problem. So that will complete, but I thought I'll take up this new topic, and then after your by the time you will also do coding assignment, so we'll get better feel for the last part, the semaphore, on which I will give you also an assignment. So kind of will postpone that for about 2 weeks. All right, so today we'll start with scheduling, and we'll have 4 classes on scheduling, maybe 5. Okay, and you can read it from any book. All books cover this topic very well, because this is the very important topic, and contents in all books are almost similar. So there's nothing much to choose from one book or other. So you can read possibly from this book, the 3 Pieces book by Ramsey. Yeah, it's available online. All right, so today we'll look at what scheduling is, and possibly if time permits we'll go into one of the scheduling algorithms. Okay, scheduling is all about queues, right? So where is the scheduling involved in this queue? Right at the place where this queue is formed. Okay, and then the place where, when these people are entering inside a plane, for example, then where everyone will go. Okay, the simplest possible, right? But in general, for anything that is related to scheduling, there is a queue, because when there is a waiting jobs are waiting for a resource. Say for example, jobs are waiting for CPU, then there is a queue of jobs, okay, from which scheduler can decide which job will go into CPU next. Okay, so and scheduling is very general term that we use in our daily lives. Airline scheduling is an important problem, right? I mean, say for example, if you are the CEO of an airline company, okay, then what you will decide? I mean, see, overall objective is to, what is objective of a company in general? Objective of company are, in my opinion, are mainly 2. First is that there has got to be growth, because they are always shareholders of a company, and the shareholders want return. Okay, shareholders want company has to grow, so value of the share also grows. Okay, and company becomes more profitable. So second point is profitable. So profitable growth is the 2. So profitable growth is the, in my opinion, main objective. Okay, so now given you are the CEO and you have to do profitable growth, obviously you can't run airlines always in loss, maybe few years, but it has to become profitable. So what do you plan? What are the things you want to optimize for? So you will optimize for routes. Okay, which route you will fly your airplanes? What is the frequency of the, how frequently planes will fly from one place to another place? Okay, if say for example Delhi, Bangalore, maybe different airlines will plan different times, right? Maybe 4 times, 5 times, or so on. Then development of timetable, because one airplane may not go into one route, right? It may go into n number of routes. Okay, then when timetable is all about when flight will start, when it will land, and then we'll go for maintenance and so on and so forth, right? Fleet assignment is, what kind of aircrafts on that particular route. If there's less numbers of people are flying, maybe airline decide to fly a smaller aircraft. Okay, aircraft rotation planning staff planning, and so on and so forth, right? And each of these requires some scheduling decision, some decision. Okay, all right. So you can see that airline scheduling requires all this. Similarly, inside airport, scheduling of events also is very, very complex, right? I mean, for example, see, note that we are doing scheduling for common resources, or the resources which are going to be used by many. For example, I mean, planning of terminals, which terminal, which flight will go. Okay, then scheduling for security. Okay, then handling a lot of other things, right? Scheduling seasonal schedule versus peak time schedule, non-seasonal schedule, who will be at the gate and who will be, how many people will be in security, and all that planning, right? So it's quite very, very complex operation, and that requires continuous scheduling decisions, right? And many decisions are not static decisions. So you may create a timetable statically, in a static way. It means that you create a timetable, but at runtime, things may change. A flight may be delayed by 2 hours, and then you have to dynamically adjust a lot of other things, right? So scheduling decisions are to be taken in real life also, in runtime or real time. Okay, and very simple. I think this problem is NP complete. You can actually look for it. This is called lift scheduling, right? So if you are designer of a lift, okay, and there are multiple lifts and they stop at different floors, what are the parameters you are going to look into when you schedule this lift? Sometimes it's very irritating that you have to go to 20th floor and lift stops at each floor. Okay, sometimes there are lifts of especially in big buildings, lifts of various speeds. Okay, for example, if you go to tallest building in say for example in New York, uh, and then there are lifts which go at very, very high speed, right? Even nowadays most of the lifts operate at very high speed, but there can be lifts of different speeds. Okay, the next decision is that, are these lifts going to stop, each lift is going to stop at each level? Okay, if suppose there's a common button that's at each floor for these lifts. Okay, then and let's assume 3 lifts are in operation. So which lift will stop at that point? Whether it's so all these decisions are extremely involved, and the algorithm is quite complex. So it's nothing but scheduling algorithm which may take care of a lot of things. Also utilization of the lift, also power consumption. For example, during night time, maybe only one lift will be operational. Okay, so many of these factors are involved, and this problem is quite complex. In real life, for example, your mother does a lot of scheduling. If she has just few hours, and then in case she does it, not necessarily all mothers do work at home, but most of us, especially mothers, are very smart in scheduling, because she has to wake up. Traditional mother will wake up early, or housewives wake up early, prepare breakfast, then lot of other household works, then possibly cook meal for lunch, and then do other stuff, and then dinner and all that, and or supervise if somebody is there for cooking and cleaning and all that, right? So it requires lot of planning and corresponding scheduling. In our machines, we have scheduling happens in PCs, laptops, batch servers, real-time system, network server, mobile devices, and any other device, right? Scheduling is important. When there are more than one processes running in any system, there's a need for scheduling. but need for scheduling is less, for example, in PCs, because there is only one user. Okay, so very simple. A PC, if you are if you are using for just browsing or doing some word processing, then usually one main task is in operational. There may be multiple background tasks, but there's not much scheduling that happens. However, if you are doing all this, right, playing video games and listening to music at the same time, doing some browsing, etc., then scheduler becomes important. And with virtualized world, when you have virtual PCs, then scheduling becomes very important. All right, any question? Okay, so in a computer, why do we need to do scheduling? What is the objective? Can anyone tell me?
We have to decide order of running various processes.
Yeah, order of deciding. But why do we need to order?
Concurrency.
Yeah, concurrency is fine. The order concurrency doesn't require ordering, right? You can run any process randomly.
So each process gets, like, every process should run.
Yeah, very good. So every process should get a time to run, right? Otherwise, some process will never get time, CPU time. This is called starvation. Okay, what else?
There are some processes which has more priority to run.
Yes, so they're higher priority processes. There's another reason. Third is, of course, overall, you can look at the factor utilization of CPU. In what order you should run process so that utilization is highest. Okay. Other thing is that how much response time for a user. If you have pressed a command and that job takes very long time, then you will get frustrated, right? So jobs which are more interactive in nature ideally should be given more priority than for example, cleaning up job your background process doing, garbage cleaning, some process doing some maintenance work underneath background processing, that will continue, but that cannot be given so much of importance, right? All right, so there are a lot of things that we'll have to play with, and scheduling this reason is very important. And the most important resource in a uniprocessor system is your CPU. Okay, so how efficiently we need to utilize this CPU, okay, or processor, and what order we need to you give turn to the processes, all that comes under the scheduling. And then who should run next is important, and how long a process should run, that's another factor. Okay, so we can see the processes are usually have process. If you look at characteristics of different processes, you'll find they have different characteristics. So for example, we have shown here two types, wherein one is CPU bound processes, where most of the time they do the computation. Okay, so they have long CPU bursts and very small bursts for IO. Okay, while there are other kind which are IO bound processes, where they use they have very small computation, not more IO. They spend more time in IO than in computation. Okay, so this is those kind of jobs. So for example, you are doing some interactive work. So even for example, you take word processing. Is it compute bound or is it IO bound? Anyone? There's very little compute element. Most of the time you are typing, right? This is what typing is what IO.
IO bound.
Yeah, it's IO bound, right? If you're running a program which primarily does, like matrix multiplication, all data is, assume all data is available in RAM, and just do matrix multiplication for hours. Okay, your matrix size, let's assume 10,000 by 10,000, may take at least I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or something, or maybe more, I don't know, depending on. So that where there's no IO is all compute bound, right? So now the question is that, are we going to look at these characteristic of processes when we do scheduling? Okay, these are the question you one has to ask, and when you design a scheduler, take care of some of these. The next thing is that if let's assume that processes are IO bound, then these processes could be of different type. For example, where 20% time they do IO, or rest of time they do computation, or 50% time they do IO, or 80% time they do IO. And if let's assume, okay, now all these display different characteristics. So on x-axis is a degree of multiprogramming. When we say degree of multiprogramming means the number of processes are increasing, as simple as that, right? Okay, and y-axis we have CPU utilization. So what do you see here? As you increase the degree of multiprogramming, in general utilization of CPU increases for any of for these three types of processes, right? Okay, so you can see that where the IO is maximum, okay, 80% IO, then in order to achieve, let's assume some utilization, 60% utilization, okay, you need more number of processes. So for example, here in this case, you need 5 processes to achieve 80% of, sorry, 60% of utilization. While in case where the processes, only processes are in the system which do 50% of IO, 50% time IO, then you need almost like 3 processes. And the processes which do 20% IO, okay, you need what? Here, so it's almost like maybe one or more than one processes, something like this. Okay, all right, to achieve 60% utilization. So, and similarly on x-axis, y-axis, you can see that it's very intuitive, right? I mean, in order to achieve say 80% utilization, you need only few processes which will have 20% IO wait time, and then more processes to that are 50% doing 50% IO wait time, and then many more processes for 80% wait time. So, all right. So in general, if you increase the degree of multiprogramming, utilization increases. However, here we have not taken care of context switching time. Okay, context switching is also an expensive operation. So especially in case of processes. So when the degree of multiprogramming really goes up, then utilization also drops. So right now here in this curve, these curves, we have not assumed that context switching time. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So when are we in? Now we have studied CPU, in last course, and now we have also looked at many things, right? Like dual mode of operation and so on and so forth. So when to make a scheduling decision? So basically, scheduler will come into play. When is scheduler come into play? Because assuming that in CPU a process is running, which is user process. Okay. Now it has to change scheduling decision, means a new process has got to, some other process has to come there. Okay. All right. So the one decision, a scheduler will come into play when new process is created. So that also, that will come to ready queue, and that has got to be scheduled. Okay. All right. And when process exits, it makes a system call, exit system call, or maybe it comes to the end of execution. So natural is kind of naturally is completing. Then scheduler has to remove that. Sorry, scheduler decide, what is to be done. What is the next process that can come into play? Okay, from the ready list. Okay, so process that is in execution comes to end, then a scheduler has to decide which process. And when process blocks for IO, a process running and it waits for disk output, some input from disk. Okay, or it may wait for on a semaphore or conditional variable. Okay, it may wait for a certain event to complete. Okay, for example, we have studied busy waiting, or we have also seen we can have some kind of signal, okay, between queues, process and queues, right? So all that can be the reason for a process to block itself, and the scheduler will come into play. Okay. So, okay, all right. So does scheduler know with this dependency, that is process A has made a wait system call? I mean, that we'll have to see whether, how operating system implements this system calls. If it's a busy waiting, the scheduler will never come to know about it, right? The process is busy waiting. If there is other case, conditional variable case, then of course it will come to know. Okay, all right. And when IO interrupt occurs, a disk is requesting for processor attention because they want to send some requested pages, right? Then or a packet has come from network, so there may be interrupt. So then a scheduler will schedule some other event. Okay, all right. And one thing we have left out. What is that? When scheduling decisions are to be made, one important point that we have studied in dual mode of operation. If let's assume none of these happen, process is
System
running.
call.
Yes, no, system call anyway we have considered. The IO is through system call, or exit is through natural exit is through system call, right? A process runs and continues to run then.
Timer interrupt.
So there has to be timer interrupt. Okay, so last point is timer interrupt happens, then scheduling decision is done. All right. Okay. Now we will study these two classes of scheduling. Okay. First one is called non-preemptive scheduling. Okay, so non-preemptive scheduling is, okay, it's as simple as that a process is picked up to run, okay, process chosen to run, okay, and it starts running, and let the process run until it blocks. Okay, it means let process run until it wants to, say the multiple things are possible, that process completes, that's fine. Okay, or it makes an IO request. Okay, if it does not do these two things, then it will continue to run until it completes. All right, so these earlier computers were of this kind. All right, all right, so there is no concept of clock interrupts then, or clock interrupts concept may be there, but clock interrupts are not used for context switching. Okay, if these are used for context switching, right, then basically we are doing preemptive, note these words, preemptive type of scheduling, where process is allowed to run only for a certain period of time, or it will be moved out and next process will, some other process will come in only when either it does exit call, or there is IO, or there is a timer interrupt. Okay, it means that now A process, it means that in preemptive scheduling can run up only for maximum some time. That is the timer interrupt, timer period. Okay, time between two timer interrupts, kind of, right? All right, and as soon as timer happens, timer interrupt happens, the whole processor moves the state from user mode to kernel mode, and then kernel, when scheduler comes into play and decide, or OS comes into play and decides what is to be done next, and the scheduler then, which is part of OS, now picks up the next process to run. All right. Okay, so different environment requires different scheduling algorithm. So scheduling algorithm is not the same in all machines. It's different in your PC. It may be different in a server. Okay, and it may be also different in your mobile system. Okay, and maybe also different in a real-time system or a batch system or real-time system. So generally, we can categorize in 3 different ways. Of course, within each category, there can be various scheduling algorithms for different problems they are trying to solve. For example, batch operating system, we'll study now. Now, you won't have come across these batch systems, right? But when I started, it was all batch. We hardly got terminal time. So you have to submit your job. So I will type my program and create punch cards, a deck of punch card. Each punch card corresponds to one line of the program, and submit that job to operator. Operator will take my bunch of cards, and then in the evening I will come and look at the printed output, which will say, oh, there's compilation error or whatever, or some output. Okay, so that used to be the thing. Or even now, batch systems are in use still. For example, if you have server which is doing only payroll processing, or maybe 5,000 employees. So, or maybe a machine for only finance related activities. So payroll is a basically payroll process or payroll program will have some input files, some output files, and then based on some inputs given by human resource department, based on the salary of the individual and so on, it will create the payroll. Okay, so there is, and it will be done for say 100,000 employees. So nobody here is waiting for immediate output. Once job is started, batch jobs are started, it will continue to run for very, very long time. So these are non-interactive in nature, and no user is waiting for it at the terminal, right? Now, these jobs can be run in either non-preemptive algorithms or preemptive algorithms. For example, even payroll processing, it will do some IO calls. Maybe some data it wants from a file in hard disk. Okay, then it will be waste. CPU time will wasted if next job is not brought into machine. Okay, now if so, it means that preemptive one will bring second job into the machine, run it for some time, and again bring the first job back whenever scheduler allows it. Or non-preemptive, wherein this job will continue to run for longer period of time. Okay, even if there is IO, of course it may switch, but there is no time slicing. So difference between preemptive batch system which are preemptive and non-preemptive is that preemptive, continuously there will be the job will move out and the schedule will decide and which job will come in, and non-preemptive it will continue to execute, and if there is a IO etc., only then it will go out. Okay, all right. So batch systems are like jobs are put in terms of batch and they run in certain order. All right. Second category is interactive types, the ones which we use now. Okay. So basically interactive, there may be multiple users, and each user may have multiple processes, and we cannot, and then CPU must be shared among all this. Otherwise one user, because all users are waiting at their terminals, so they, if some user does not get response, will get frustrated, right? So the interactive system usually takes care of this, that resources are shared among number of users, and each user is given CPU only for fixed period of time. Okay. All right. And third type of systems are real-time system. What is a real-time system in general? Anybody? Any real-time system you have come across? Well, the first thing is that what is real time? Okay, you have not come across this term so far in your course? Okay. Yes or no?
No.
No? Okay. All right, that's fine. Nah? That's fine. See, real time, when we say a job is real time job, then there is a deadline associated with it. Okay. So when I say that assignment submission deadline is real time deadline, or or it means that whatever is the deadline, so a deadline is defined with very precise time. For example, I say submit it by Friday 11 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so 11 p.m. on certain date is exact time by which you must submit. So this is hard deadline. It means that anybody submits assignment after the deadline, it will not be considered as submission. That's hard deadline. So I have defined hard deadline. Okay, so for example, hard deadlines are there for in real life plane, right? You take flight and it leaves. If you come late, it's your problem, right? There is no soft deadline. You can't make a phone call and say that I am late, please delay the flight by 15 minutes or something like that. So this is a hard deadline. Okay, deadlines can also be solved, which for example, you request that there's no power, can you give 15 minutes more, or maybe one extra day to submit assignment. So those are soft deadlines which can be, there is not so much of penalty. If there is a huge penalty of missing deadline, that is a hard deadline. Now you tell me, with this you have done networking course, right? So internet, is it real-time system or non-real-time system? Anyone? Advait,
Real time system.
can you give guarantee that packet from one end will reach to other end within, say from here, you may, assuming that you are in Goa?
We can't guarantee. That's
then,
why I said non-real time system.
oh, you said non-real time. Okay, good. Very good. It's non-real time. You cannot give guarantee in internet. This reason is called best effort, right? Nobody can give guarantee. Is Ethernet a real-time system? No. There is no guarantee can be given Ethernet. You can't give a guarantee that packet will reach, because because of collision, multiple collisions, packet may never reach. Again, it's a best effort. Of course, we improve on it with switch Ethernet, etc. But basic Ethernet is non-real time. then how you suppose somebody, we have heard of remote surgeries, right? A surgeon in New York is operating on a patient through robot, etc., in say Bangalore, and so over internet. How it will be done? It is very hard. It's very hard. Okay. How about missile firing? Say each missile that is fired, missile has number of computers inside, right? Missile is not just put some explosive material and send it to air, right? It is a very advanced computing it does, right? It does a lot of things to compute its path, its speed, and so on and so forth, when to explode and all that. All these things are calculated in real time. Okay, here is scheduling. If there's a processor inside, the scheduling that is to be done has to be in real time. How about self-driven cars? Can we
Real
use
time.
this? Yeah, it has to be real time. You can't use the Linux there, right? Or Windows. Okay. Okay. How about audio processing versus video processing? Which of these will require real-time processing in general? What is more sensitive, your ears or eyes?
Eyes.
No, ears. Okay. So audio processing requires more real-time processing, because in video, if few frames are missed, or if certain data items are missed, you won't even notice it. Okay, so ears are more sensitive to some of these things. For example, delay and delay variation, jitter, etc. Right, so all these are removed from audio rather than from video. Okay, all right. Okay, so Linux and Windows both are non-real time. All right, so now scheduling can be done. Primarily, we discuss scheduling for processor, but it can be done for another command like bus scheduling, network scheduling, IO scheduling, and so on. All right, then there is something called dispatcher and something called scheduler. Okay, in general, we'll say word scheduling is actually an algorithm, or that will scheduling algorithm that will decide what to run next and what is to be run next to next, right, and so on. But dispatcher is the one which does actual job of moving a process out and bringing other process in, that we have studied earlier, or context switching. Its responsibility is primarily context switching. Okay, save previous process state in PCB and then load next process state from PCB to registers and so on. What all we have studied is role of dispatcher. Note that these terms are used very sometimes, because some of these terms, dispatcher, etc., are not used in modern OS for some reason or other, but I wanted to bring it just to tell you the difference. Okay, scheduler is the one which does high level policy. Okay, it's basically algorithm which decides what to run next. So note that there is two things. First is decision based on a lot of information what is to run next, and then the one which actually does the dirty job of moving in, moving out of processes or context switching. Okay, now the goal or criteria of schedulers are minimize response time. Now basically response time is word used in interactive system when user is waiting for a response, right? It's a response time is time between issuing a command and getting a result. Okay, second goal of scheduler could be maximize throughput, maximum number of jobs, right? I mean, while it means that maximum number of jobs should be finished. If there are multiple users, then how many jobs one can finish. Now you can see the response versus throughput could be contradictory. Okay, you have to maybe reduce, increase the response time to achieve more throughput. There may be situation like that. Okay, then turnaround time is average elapsed time. Okay, and basically time when a job comes and time when it finishes, right? That's called elapsed time. Sometimes, we also use it called wait time. So this terminology we use primarily for batch systems. Okay, we'll try to avoid this terminology very often because we are not into batch systems anymore, right? And then another important property is fairness. Okay, what is fairness? Are we treating everyone fairly, or are we biased? Is scheduler biased towards somebody? Say for example, a scheduler has to be biased for short jobs to achieve better response time. Okay, say for example, a very large job comes, very big job comes, which is highly compute intensive, and there are many small jobs which are primarily very small query by user. Okay, so those are largely IO bound or very small compute jobs. Now schedulers decide what way to schedule this. Okay, one important concept which possibly you would have studied in networking is called head of line blocking. Okay, when in a switch, when you do routing decisions at layer 2, okay, their input ports are output ports, right? And there's a heavy packet comes which is largest in size. Okay, and that will take some time to cross, right, from one port to another port, and behind these are small number of packets. They are all get blocked, right? In real life situation, given you opportunity of driving car and you have Maruti 800 car, and would you like to be behind and there are multiple lanes, you have a choice of changing lanes, would you like to be behind and there's a traffic light and you will find a huge truck versus there are 2-3 cars in other lane in front? Which one you will prefer? Because this truck will take own time to move and cross because it's a long, so you will prefer not to be behind very large size truck. Okay, this is called head of line blocking. Okay, similarly, if there's a very heavy job that comes, right, and there are small jobs, and scheduler decide I will put small jobs first, then heavy job will think, what's happening, why I'm not getting chance. Okay, so fairness is what is very important among peer jobs. Now a scheduler may not always be fair to all processes, okay, because it has to achieve a lot of other goals. Okay, and then for example there can be priority. There can a high priority job, low priority job, very low priority job, and so on, right? So a scheduler has to try to maximize fairness given other constraints. Okay, all right, so these goals are discussed here. Let me just do it for another 2 minutes. Minimize response time, the time between issuing a command and getting the result. Okay, it's very important for interactive systems. Then maximize throughput is maximize operations per second or jobs per second. All right, okay, and third is turnaround time. Okay, which is nothing but time when job arrives from that time when it completes, right? So basically time completion minus time of arrival is turnaround time. Okay, all right, so now this also has to be less. because it means that how many times how much time job has to wait for completion since it has come. So scheduling algorithm may try to optimize turnaround time and throughput. All right, so it's job of scheduler is actually to optimize things. All right, then fairness we have already studied. So these are the goals, and some of the metrics which you use is the waiting time for process. Now waiting time is time before P gets scheduled. It's a time in actually waiting queue or ready queue. Okay, time in ready queue. How much time job will wait before it gets picked up or process gets picked up. Okay, and from this, if there are number of processes, then we can say that what is average waiting time for all processes. Then we have completion time, which is nothing but waiting time and run time. Okay, so basically we can say it's very similar to completion time is very similar to turnaround time. All right, so these are the important parameters that we will study in the next class. We'll take up very important algorithm, first come first serve, then we'll study shortest job first, and third is shortest remaining time first. All right, okay, any question?
So I have this question about when we were discussing real time. So you took the example of a person, a doctor, operating to a far distance, and we consider it real time scenario. But when this will also go through internet only.
Yeah, so that's a challenge, right? There's always a challenge. Now, see, internet, the problem is that things can go wrong if you use internet. Then nobody gives any guarantee. So normally some other systems may be used. I don't know what is the communication protocol there.
Okay, they must have made something else.
I don't know. We have to really see it, but remote
Yeah.
searches do happen. And how do we achieve real time over non-real time system? That's important criteria, right? Please look into it. I mean, Google it. Maybe you can find it out.
Sure.
Okay, but there are some real time protocols that are there. For example, synchronous protocols, right? I mean, for example, you have I don't know, you won't have studied this, but this is called SDH hierarchy or sonnet hierarchy or T1 E1 lines, right? So basically what happens is that at both ends, transmitter and receiver end, you have time slots. Okay, so this is time slot is for fixed duration T1, T2, T3. Okay, similarly at receiving end, you also run a basically a clock of certain number of slots, say T up to T16, for example. Okay, and whatever data is sent here is received in the first slot here, and second slot data, and in between them is of course a link running. So you have a this kind of synchronous machine runs at this end, which will put data here and receive and put in the first slot. And second, once this transmission over, this second slot data, which is usually a byte or something, goes here and goes into second time slot. Now note that it's a time slot, so don't see that it's a space. It's a time slot. So first let's assume each time slot is 1 second. So first second, what all will receive, and second whatever is sent here in the second will be received here. So this all that's required is these two clocks need to synchronize. So this is called synchronous SDH or synchronous communication mechanism. Okay, so when we have synchronous communication mechanism, then it's all real time. Now when you have asynchronous communication like internet, then there cannot be any guarantees, right? Because so that's the challenge. Okay, so I cannot answer your question until what we'll have to look into real design what kind of protocols used, but I think if it's absolute real time, then it has to use something other than internet, or some protocol it has to run over internet to make it so called close to real time. Because if you are creating real time system over unreal time system, then it's a difficult problem to solve. Okay, all right, okay. Any other question? All right, then see you tomorrow.